to like, okay, what are the things that people are podcasters or podcast guests are doing wrong? To answer your question, not giving a clear call to action, I think, is probably one of the highest things that people do wrong. So people will come to me like, none of my listeners are buying from me. Cool. When was the last time you told them what you do? When was the last time you said, hey, listener, come buy my stuff?
Hey, I'm Tine, your pivot and pay strategist. I help Black women double their income by leveraging their existing skills. I am all about getting Black women paid, whether you're an employee or a business owner. And you're listening to the Getting Black Women Paid podcast. Let's go. Hello and welcome to the Getting Black Women Paid podcast. I'm your host, Tine Zikas, international speaker, award-winning author, founder and CEO of Getting Black Women Paid, and your Audacity coach. We have a guest episode today, and I am so excited for this conversation. For any of you who have considered starting your own podcast or who are already podcasters and are working to grow that podcast, this conversation is for you. I want to tell you a little bit about our guest, and then we will dive right in. Alesia Galati is a podcast strategist and the founder of Galati Media. Alesia helps value-driven businesses and thought leaders launch and grow podcasts that make a real impact. She's worked with over 50 clients, supporting them through every step of the podcasting journey, from strategy to launch and beyond. Alesia is here to share her expertise and help you leverage the power of podcasting to amplify your message and achieve your goals. Let's get into it. Well, Alesia, thank you so much for joining us today. I cannot wait for this conversation.
Yes, I'm so excited. Anytime I get to talk to other podcasters, I'm like, yes, let's do it.
And selfishly, I'm going to be like taking notes during this conversation because I know I have a lot to learn as well. But, I always like to start our guests off with their origin story. I'm curious how you came to be doing this work.
Yeah, so I guess the best part to start with is the beginning when I first started listening to podcasts, and that would have been around 2015. I was a newer mom. My kid was about 1 at the time, and I had to drive him to the babysitters and then back. Then I'd have to go to a job and then go pick him up. And it was just a lot more of a commute than I was used to, especially since I lived 5 minutes from my work. But then the babysitter was 20 minutes out of the way. And so I found myself doing lots of driving and realized very quickly that they play the same 3 songs on the radio. It got annoying. And I'm a lifelong learner. I love, love, love to learn. And discovered podcasts. Now, this is back when like Google Play Music was a thing. Still, it is not anymore. But started listening there. And they had recommended podcasts. I was like, this is fascinating. The first one I listened to was called Stuff You Should Know. And it was all about the things you should know about random things in your house or random things that you wouldn't really think to like look into the history of. And I get to work, and I'm working in manufacturing and supply chain at the time. So like 150 guys to 5 women. And I'm like, podcasts, guys, like this is crazy. And they're just like, okay, Alesia, you're crazy. Like, what are you talking about? So fast forward 2018, actually 2016, 17, I started guesting on podcasts talking about my postpartum depression journey and the struggles of it. Now, this is before Chrissy Teigen came out and like talked about it. So people weren't really talking about it that much.
Yeah.
And I was like, everybody needs to know about this. Like, I cannot believe that I went through this, or that, even like with doctor would be like, oh, how are you doing? How are you? I'm fine. Right. Like, even though I was not fine, like, no, tell your doctor you're not fine. And so I was having these conversations with other moms while also working my 9 to 5, while also working on getting my bachelor's. There was just a lot happening. 2018 decided I'm going to launch my own podcast. How hard can it be? And then launched it and found out fairly quickly I do not like talking about things on my podcast that I was doing in my day job. So it was all about marketing for e-commerce businesses and inventory analysis and like all the behind the scenes things that e-commerce businesses should know, especially the small ones, right? Because at the time there were not a lot of podcasts geared specifically for e-commerce businesses.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it. I didn't like having the conversations. It got really boring and that fell off. And then in 2019, launched a podcast with my sister called Two Sisters and a Cult. And we talked about cults from the lens of having been cult survivors. We grew up in a cult.
Yeah.
And so we would talk about a different cult every week, every other week or so. And we would share the story with each other. And that I found was where I really discovered the power of podcasting
Yes.
because we would get DMs of people saying, "Oh my goodness, me too. I grew up in a cult
Mm.
too," or "I was in a very cult like situation. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Here's my story," right? Like just opening the door for them to share and to feel seen, to feel heard was like, I have chills. It was just so
Yes.
impactful. And to be
Yeah.
able to use our voices to do that was life changing, quite honestly. And then in 2020, early 2020, I was like, I think I could do this for other people. I mean, I have a degree in marketing. I've been doing digital marketing on the side, worked with some micro agencies while still having my 9 to 5. I have all these connections that I've made over the years of guesting on podcasts and being in these groups. Let me see if I could launch podcasts for other people. Well, lo and behold, the universe was like, say less. And lost my job due to COVID. And I am the
Yep.
sole financial provider for my family. My husband is a stay at home dad. He homeschools our kids. Like, that is his thing, and he gets tons of fulfillment from it. I could never, like, at
Right.
all. No
My
thanks.
my husband is full-time dad as well, and I don't know how. I don't know how.
No. Yes. And so I was like, well, I got to make money because my family's got to eat. We got to take care of this. And so reached out to my connections and said, hey, I think I could launch the podcast for people. Does anyone want to do it with me? Here's the price, here it would look like, here's the timeline, etc. That person who said yes is still with me today, which is wild. We're still
Amazing. I
working
love
together.
that.
I know. And so, yeah, since then, we have launched over 20 podcasts, work with over 50 podcasters on their podcasts, and we produce anywhere from 10 to 15 weekly shows, depending on the time of year, who's on, who's off, if they're weekly, bi-weekly, etc. But
Yeah.
it's me and two other women, all based in the US. And yeah, so that's kind of my story.
Oh, that's amazing. And I love how, you're not only educating people on, things that maybe they haven't had experience with, but just the idea of so many people getting to realize they're not alone in what they're going through, whether that's talking about the postpartum stuff, surviving a cult, like that is such a lonely experience. So to be able to touch so many people and let them know they were not alone is incredible. And I know that you believe that, everyone has a story worth sharing. And I'm wondering if you can share with us kind of why podcasting is such a powerful tool for amplifying marginalized voices. And
Yeah.
what impact have you seen people have when they finally share their story out loud?
Yeah. So, what I love about podcasting is that there is a moment where you're, maybe scrolling through your apps, through the app, and you're trying to find a new podcast to listen to. And yeah, you might see the person's face on the cover, but not always. And so you're like, oh, that topic sounds interesting. Or maybe you search and you click on it and you start listening to them. And at that point it's just their voice. It does not matter what they look like, which I it doesn't matter what their sexuality is. It doesn't, like, none of that stuff matters. It's
Yeah.
I am choosing to spend the next 30 minutes with this voice, and that is it. And I think that that has really opened the door for a lot of marginalized folks, especially people of color, to be able to get their message out into the world. I talked to this one woman. She has a podcast, and she specifically is like a fitness instructor, but very anti like diet culture. And she has a
Mhm.
podcast, and a lot of people found her through her podcast. And when they find out that she's Black, they're like, "What? What do you mean? Like, I've been listening to you for a year, and I had no
Yeah.
idea."
Well, because we don't realize how much our brains fill in the gaps, right? So you build
Yes.
a character in your mind of what this person looks like. And so if you get new information, it can be pretty surprising. That is so funny.
Yeah, but like for her to that barrier was dropped,
Yeah.
right? That those preconceived ideas that we have about people about because of the color of their skin or because of their sexuality or because of how they look, that our brain like is filling in those pieces
Mhm.
of like this is what my expectation
Right.
is of
And
that
maybe I
person
won't be
because
able to relate to them or they won't
right.
understand me. And so we're putting up that barrier unconsciously. Oh,
Yeah,
that's such
which
a good
is
point.
terrible, right? Like I hate that that is our society. It is the reality we live in, though.
Yeah.
And I think that podcasts have been such a great way for people to drop that barrier. But then, even if you think about radio or media and how much of the content does not showcase marginalized voices, I mean, even thinking about I read a lot of books. So, like, I feel like everything can tie back to the publishing industry and how wild it is. But a
Yeah.
lot of the publishers will, like, when they're looking at, okay, who do we want to pick up next? They're going to look at the person's profile. They're going to look at all these things. And so, what did a lot of the Black specifically authors do? They went the indie publishing route. And I feel like
Yeah.
podcasting is the indie publishing route for those of us that are like, listen, I have something to say. No one is giving me a platform to say this really important thing. So I'm going to stand on my own 2 feet and I'm going to do it, which I
Yeah.
think is just such a powerful way for us to find our communities, to get to know people on a deeper level, but also maybe combat some of those preconceived ideas as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I think you're right about that it is kind of the indie publishing route. But I think because of that, some of us end up with the misconception that podcasting is really just hitting record and uploading, right? But you
Mm.
also emphasize strategy. I mean,
Yes.
it is, right? That can be. You could have a podcast that nobody listens to, that's fine.
Right.
But you really emphasize strategy. And I'm wondering, what does a podcast strategy really look like and why is it so important?
Yeah. So when we're launching someone, we start at the very beginning with that market research. And I think that that just has to do with like my degree in marketing of being like, nope, let's look at the market research. Let's see what the data tells us. Like, give us information. And then we make decisions based off that information, not off of our feelings. Okay. And thank you. Right. Because if that were the case, no one would be doing this because it is a lot of work. And we would be like, I'm giving up. That's it. But when you see the downloads, you're like, okay, I don't need to give up just yet. And so the first thing we do is that market research, and we look at clarifying your audience, clarifying your message, making sure that it is a viable podcast, right? Like sometimes a podcast is not the right avenue for someone, and that's okay. Sometimes that's not the right route for someone. And so identifying that early on is really important. And usually I can tell in the first meeting with someone, like I have turned people away who are like, here's my money. And I'm like, I honestly don't think I can help you because you're not clear on your message. And I'm going to
Mhm.
be coaching you the whole time on your message. It's not my job. Sorry. Like I do
Right.
other things. I can't help. I could help you. I don't want to. I'm sorry. Like
Right. That's not
go
the
be a
scope of the work that you do. Yeah.
exactly. And so go guest on some podcasts to see if verbally processing or having conversations is even something that you want to do first. But we go through all of that stuff. We look at what the market currently looks like for podcasts around your topic. So, for your podcast specifically, right? It's getting Black women paid. Making sure that, okay, what are some other podcasts out there that are about getting women paid, right? Because that is the niche. We wouldn't
Mhm.
just want to do anybody getting paid. Sure, we could, but that's too broad. All right, what are the podcasts that are for marginalized folks that are trying to get paid? What's the competition? What does that look like? Let's listen to
Yeah.
those episodes. And then, especially because my clients don't want to listen to their competition, right? Like let's remove that from them. So we
Yeah.
listen to the episodes and then we determine, okay, here's kind of what they're saying, here's their take. Here are ways that you can differentiate yourself. Here are ways that you can show up very differently. Here are conversations you can have that are going to hit home, that are still in alignment with what you're trying to achieve, but are still a need in the industry, right? And so, like, kind
Yeah.
of bringing it all together with a strategy that makes sense for the person. And then throughout, so we've launched, cool, hoorah. Throughout that, your goal as a podcaster is going to change constantly. Some of it might be, okay, I have a business and I want to get leads from my podcast. Cool. Well, right now I want to focus on making sure that I'm increasing my audience. Or maybe I want to get some sponsors, or maybe I'm trying to increase brand awareness because I have an event coming up, right? Like
Yeah.
the goal post can change constantly. I usually tell people give it about 6 months of one specific goal. And there are
Mm.
usually four that we see. I have it on my wall here. I'm going to pull it down so I can see it. Um, the first is conversion. Like you're turning your listeners into leads or you're turning your guests into leads for your
Mhm.
business. The second one is impact, where you're trying to increase that brand visibility. You want to educate your audience. You might not really be monetizing. Sure, you might want to, and there might be some ways you're doing that. But your real goal is I want to create an impact in the world.
Yeah.
The third one is growth. You want to grow your audience, you want to grow your listenership, you want to increase the number of people that can hear your voice in some way. And
Yeah.
then the fourth one is engagement. You want your audience to interact, which I think is probably the hardest goal of that because podcast
Yeah.
listeners love you to pieces, but you do not take action all the
Right.
time.
Well, if you're
And if I'm like,
listening and
yeah,
driving, you're not going to be now, oh, let me go send an email. Like that's not.
right, exactly,
Yeah.
because that's just how podcast listeners are. They're consuming the content as they're doing other things.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have to hear send a DM, leave a rating and review at least 50 times before they actually take action. And
Yep.
so that is the one. I think the engagement one is probably the hardest one, but those are the four that we tend to see. So pick one. And you might
Mhm.
say, oh, but like all of them? Come on, I want all of them. I know, I know. And some of them you might be able to achieve strategically as you're doing the one that you're focusing on. You might be able to achieve little wins in the other categories. But if you are focusing on one and giving it your all, then you're going to get better results than splitting your time between all of them, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to kind of revisit a couple of the things you mentioned because one of them is so crucial for all of our business owners listening. The idea that when someone comes to you and they are not your ideal client and they don't have the prerequisites to work with you, even though they've got the money, you can still say, no, thank you, or this isn't a fit yet. And here are some resources for how you can get there, right? I love the idea of, why don't you go be a guest on other people's podcasts and see if this is for you? And while you're doing that, maybe you'll refine your message a bit, then come back to me and we'll talk.
Right.
I love how you set that boundary of like, this is the scope of the work I'm doing with my clients. And someone else who's going to come pay me, like, that's not my client.
Yeah.
That's huge. Um, and then I also love how you kind of break down like what the goals are. And it is so hard for us, especially kind of these solo entrepreneurs, to say like focus on one thing.
Right.
That is so hard, but I can see why it's really important because you need to be giving everything to that one particular strategy in order to achieve that one particular goal. Um, and so I'm wondering, other than maybe focusing on too many goals at once, what are the most common mistakes that you see podcasters or even podcast guests making, and how can we avoid them?
Yeah. So really and I think it really does go back to like what your goals are, but like not actually doing the things that you need to achieve those goals. I think so often, especially as business owners and content creators, we're like, I have this new idea and I'm going to launch this new program, it's going to be great. And then we give ourselves 2 weeks to achieve whatever goal that is, to fill out the program, to sell it. And then we get mad that it didn't work, or we throw it away saying, oh, that obviously didn't work. Did it
Oh,
not
girl,
work?
I'm like, were you in my office when I was doing that exact thing? Okay. calling me directly out. Okay.
Yeah. Did it not work, or did we not put our best in to actually get the results that we wanted to? And is it because we thought we could achieve it in that time? Or was it because we were self-sabotaging ourselves the whole time? Right. And so, like, I think that if we just kind of get outside of our own heads for a second, it allows us to be able to achieve these goals a lot better. So, like, for example, I had a client where she was like, um, I'm not getting any leads from my podcast. And I'm like, cool, let's talk about that. What is a lead for you? Is that your listeners? Is that your guests? What does that look like? And so we talked about that during one of her strategy sessions. And then 2 months later, she's like, these downloads are looking really small. And I was like, cool, let's talk about that. 2 months ago, you said that you wanted to turn your guests into connection collaborators or clients. How is that going? Because the number of downloads does not matter if your goal is to turn the guest
Yeah.
into a connection, a collaborator, or client. So which one is it? Because we
Mm.
we really have to get clear. And so I think that's one thing. And then not giving your going back to like, okay, what are the things that people are podcasters or podcast guests are doing wrong? To answer your question, not giving a clear call to action, I think, is probably one of the highest things that people do wrong. So people will come to me like, none of my listeners are buying from me. Cool. When was the last time you told them what you do? When was the last time you said, hey, listener, come buy my stuff? All
Yeah.
right. So let's go ahead and address that in the next 5 episodes that you have. I want 3 of them to have a direct call to action to one of your products or services. There you go. Easy peasy. And
Yeah.
then we can talk about no one's buying your stuff, because then we can dig a little deeper into, all right, what calls to actions are you using that are aligned? Are they aligned with the content within the episode? Do you want to instead go to more dynamic content? So one of our clients, they're actually shifting to this, where they're going to have 3 different dynamic, and when I say dynamic, I mean it'll go into every single episode they've ever produced, where if someone's listening to episode 2, they'll get the same ad as episode 152.
Gotcha.
That's what I
Yeah.
mean by dynamic. So for people who are like, wait a minute, what do you mean? And
Yeah.
so we're going to have 3 rotating ads within the podcast. One is for her freebie. One is for her low ticket offer, which is like a one-off strategy session. And then the other one is for her coaching, her like one-on-one higher ticket thing. And
Hmm.
so that way it alternates, where people are going to hear about the things that she has to offer in every single episode. And it doesn't matter which one they're listening to, they're going to get served one of those 3 ads. And so,
Mm.
like, you got to get strategic with it. Like, going back to, okay, they don't have that call to action. If you're a guest on someone's podcast and you are trying to grow your own audience, and this is where I think like it keeps going back to like, what are your goals? Okay, I want to
Yeah.
grow my podcast. Cool. I'm a guest on someone else's podcast. What call to action are you giving them? Are you telling them to go to your Instagram? They're not going to go to your Instagram and then go to your podcast. Instead, reach the podcast listeners right where they are and say, hey, you're listening to this podcast on your podcast app or on YouTube or wherever. If you like what I had to say today, please go check out my podcast. This is the title. And
Yeah.
because you know that they're already podcast listeners, they're more likely to take that action, which then increases your download numbers, right? And so, like, it all ties into back to
Mm.
the goals. What is the goal that you're trying to achieve? Okay, then we can start taking those actions to actually achieve those goals. But the common mistake is that you're not clear on that one goal. And so then you're making these other mistakes along the way that are not going to help you with growing whatever it is that you're trying to grow in whatever way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm wondering for folks who are thinking about monetization, and they're saying like, because I want to monetize my podcast, yes to all of those goals, right? Grow
Yeah.
the audience, turn it into leads, all the things. But for folks who are thinking about monetization, I'm wondering, what's the smartest way to start aligning their podcast so that they can be focused on both income and impact?
Yes. So first and foremost, what a monetization is your like what goal monetization goal are you trying to achieve? Because yes, the monetization can be a goal, but like, are you trying to turn your listeners into leads? then you need to be doing a lot of educating at the front end of that buyer journey of here's what you're struggling with, here's how you can work with me, sharing stories about ways that people are able to make a difference, and so that way your listener can imagine themselves in the shoes of that person. And so that's how you're going to want to focus that. Maybe your goal is to turn your guests into, like I said, clients, collaborators, or connections, right? Like that doesn't mean that every guest you're going to sell to. If it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense, but they might know somebody who you can sell to. So, what does that continued relationship look like with that guest that you had on that you're featuring on your show? And then if your goal is to get sponsorships, then that, which I think that a lot of people have this very big misconception about sponsorships, that you start a podcast and you get some sponsors, it's great. No, you have to have at least 10,000 downloads per month to even be considered for
Yeah.
many of these sponsors. And so I would actually recommend, because 95% of podcasters will never get there, to instead go one of the other routes or go the affiliate route. And that's not to say that you can't get sponsors, but a lot of these bigger sponsors who are sponsoring across a bunch of podcasts are not looking at anything less than 10,000 downloads a month. Now,
Mhm.
if you are a podcaster who is talking specifically to middle class menopausal women, you could probably get a sponsor, right? Like there
Right.
are products out there that are like,
Right.
yes, you are talking to my perfect person.
Right.
And I like, we have a lot of we have not a lot. We have two menopausal podcasts that we talk to, like midlife women podcasts. And so that's why I know this. But like, all right, we've got certain creams that you might need at that age for more intimate parts of your body.
Yeah.
They're going to get a better result on a podcast talking specifically to midlife women than they will giving Facebook their money and hoping
Right.
that it reaches the right people, right? And so, like, they're going to be like, yes, I would love for you to sponsor your podcast for the next 6 months. And oh my goodness, you want to interview our CEO? Absolutely. Oh, you
Yeah.
want a coupon code for your listeners? Here's 10% off our, like,
Yeah.
those are the kinds of affiliate or sponsorship relationships that you're going to want to look for when, especially if you are very clear on your audience, you're very clear on who they are, what their needs are, and then you can then serve them in a positive way and talk about the products that you actually know and like. And so that's why I recommend going more of the affiliate route,
Mhm.
but you can build on that with sponsorships to say, look, I'm sold X amount, you should sponsor my podcast because then you'll be the only product that I'm talking about here.
Right.
And I think that businesses 5 years ago, they probably weren't, not probably, they were not putting as many sponsorship dollars into podcasts as they are now. And a
Sure.
lot of these businesses are looking for more niche podcasts to spend their money on because they know that the marketing works, because these listeners know, like, and trust the person who's talking, which is
Yeah.
why, I think TikTok Shop does so well, is because it's these people who are like, look, I tried this new makeup routine. Here's the products I was using. Here's how you can buy them. And I mean, I had a friend. She is like all into Disney, and she has this like short skirt combo thing that she's constantly talking about, that she wears to Disney, and she's got her bunny ears, or not bunny ears, the Mickey ears, and like the whole get up.
Yeah.
And she's got this skirt short thing. Like it's shorts underneath and a skirt outside.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she has this in like 15 different colors, like all the colors possible she has. So she's got pictures and pictures. This girl, they were on sale and she made like 2,500 bucks promoting it on TikTok because people know her, like her, and trust her, right? And she doesn't
Yeah.
have a huge audience, but she was able to make affiliate money. And like, those are the kinds of relationships you want to have where it makes sense and you're able to make some money from it. And yes, you're able to still grow your audience and talk about the things that you want to talk about and make the impact that you're trying to make. So, like the menopausal podcast or the midlife podcast, who is trying to empower midlife women to be able to have the information that maybe their mothers did not have, right? They're
Yeah.
trying to educate, they're trying to make that impact, a positive change in the world that they want to see, and also can make some money from it as well. So that's where I think that you have to just figure out which route would make the most sense for you, whether it's listeners to leads, guests into potential clients, collaborators, or connections, sponsorships if you have the ability to do so, or affiliates. Any of those are going to be really good
Yeah.
routes to go.
Yeah. And I think so many of us think about sponsorship, but you're so right that, right, 95% of podcasters are not going to get to those numbers. And so how crucial is it to then say, okay, well, the more I niche down on my audience, the more I can speak to maybe individual organizations that really want access to that niche. And I can be serving them at the same time that I'm recommending these products, because they are so beneficial to my listeners. I love that. That's kind of where you can kind of marry that income and impact piece. And
Yeah.
before we wrap up, I know that so many folks listening are just thinking, well, how do I launch or grow my own podcast? How can I learn more about you and what you do? So I'm wondering, for folks who are dying to hear more from Alesia, where can we find you?
Yes. So I'm going to take my own advice. And wherever you're obviously listening to this podcast, I also have a podcast called Podcasting Unlocked, where I have twice a week episodes that go live. Tuesdays are solos, and Thursdays are guests. And it's really just a showcase that there's no one right way to podcast when I have these awesome guests on. And then Tuesdays are more educational, 20 minutes or less. Let's get to the meat of some strategies that you can implement right away. And you can go to helpmypod.com, where I have resources, workshops, low ticket things. I have like 80 plus AI prompts for podcasters for, I think it's less than $30, right? Like easy little products that you can buy if you're like, I need a little more support, but I maybe can't afford to work with Alesia just yet. There's lots of resources there as well.
Oh, fantastic. So yes, so wherever you're listening now, you can search for, is it Podcast Unlocked? Podcasting Unlocked.
Podcasting Unlocked. Yep.
Podcasting Unlocked. And we'll also have helpmypod.com in the show notes for you to grab that. And it's also easy to remember, which is
Yes.
perfect. So, right, for people who are jogging while they're listening, right, I can
Yep.
remember helpmypod.com. That's perfect.
You don't have
So
to
thank
spell
you
my
for,
name. It's fine.
yeah, exactly. So you're living the example. Yes, Teen Zekas with an apostrophe. I understand that you don't always want people trying to spell the name.
Yeah.
Well, Alesia, thank you so much for joining us and just sharing your wisdom around this work. And I also just want to thank you for the work that you're doing, really helping folks to amplify their own voices and to share their stories, especially those of us from marginalized backgrounds. I really appreciate the work that you do.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate you for having me on the show and giving me the space to talk.
Absolutely. All right. And thank you all for listening with us today. And we will see you in the next one. Hey, thanks for listening to the Getting Black Women Paid podcast. If you want to hear more episodes like this one, subscribe wherever you're listening now. And if you love what you heard, be sure to leave us a review. And make sure you share this podcast with the incredible Black women in your life so we can continue getting Black women paid. All right, we'll see you in the next one.